the more I learn about exercise science and literature and exercise, period, not this specific style that we do, that we love.
Doing something consistently.
That's the bottom of the pyramid, right, of that hierarchy. But as long as people are doing something, there's a consistent theme in the research that shows that exercise is good for you. And it's going to cultivate a lot of positive benefits in the long term. Now, we can argue all day about what is safe and effective exercise and what's a good form of exercise. But in a world where people are not doing anything, something is certainly better than nothing.
We are about to launch.
You ready?
I am ready.
Truth, not trends.
Truth, not trends.
Boom, baby.
What's going on? We are live in the studio, as we often are. No longer in the mother's basement. Coming to you from Oakland, California.
The mother's basement sounds like a bar or like a restaurant or something.
Anybody who's been here long enough knows that we used to come to you live from our mother's basements with the, coconut oil and
tubs and tubs of coconut oil.
Yeah. So, flashback.
We used to spoon feed each other like champagne glasses.
Right, there we go.
This is the podcast where we help you maximize your strength as safely
and efficiently
as possible.
Nice.
My name is Jesse Schmitz, and I have been a strength coach for 2,107 days.
Holy crap, 2,107 days. My name is Liam Bauer, and I've been a strength coach for 35 years.
Holy moly.
And counting.
That's a lot of years, people.
That's more than 30 years.
That's more than 34 years. Today, we have a very cool guest. He is live and in person. His name is Logan Emmet Herlihy.
That's right. Mr. Herlihy is here from Discover Strength in Minnesota, visiting us with us, doing a little clinical rotation at TNT Strength, Oakland. He's here for an entire week, living, loving, learning, enjoying, training, and hanging out with us here in the studio for our podcast.
That's right. Logan is a published author. He wrote a book called How to Look Good Naked. He's working on a sequel. He's also completing his master's degree in strength and conditioning.
That's right.
He is a knowledgeable fellow, as I say in this recording, a rising star in the fitness industry.
In the fitness
Years from now, we'll look back. That's right. Years from now, we'll look back at this episode as the origin story of a great person. You heard it first here at TNT. Not really. I mean, you did, because he's been a guest here previously.
True. He also hosts the Discover Strength podcast, among his many skills, abilities, fucking duties. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. Anyway, duties. Hey, it's no big deal.
So people tune in. We're going to cover a range of topics. We're going to compare and contrast some training techniques, some company differences between TNT Strength and Discover Strength. We're going to talk about the history of strength training. We're going to talk about equipment. We're going to talk about business building.
We also had a brief visit from Taylor Jones in the studio while we're here today. Taylor Jones, lead strength coach here at TNT Strength.
That's right. Before we get into the episode, though, we got to tell you a little about.
We got to talk about our podcast partner.
That's right. Local Foods, Cali being the first one. Local Foods, feed your inner athlete.
I have some fries with that.
You can have fries if you want them. I'm sure they'll make them for you. You can decide how healthy or not you want these meals to be, but whatever they are, they're going to make you some pre-packaged, pop them in the microwave, freaking-licious meals. You can have them delivered straight to your doorstep, or you can have them delivered here to the TNT Strength refrigerator.
That's right. It's waiting for you. We're always waiting for you as well. People pop in, they pick them up, they run away. They don't even say hi. It's a little bit sad.
Pop them in the microwave. 2 minutes and you're ready to go. Healthy, delicious foods. Remember, when you order your food from Locale Foods, use the discount code TNT Strength 5 to get 5% off your order.
And before you do that, because you can use that as your post-workout meal, you want to get in a serious workout at home using the Harambe system, the greatest band-based strength training system on the planet. Harambe system created by our friend Khaled Borbea in NYC, aka Boo Robbie. He is the man who invented the best band-based system around. It's basically a strength training system with a stainless steel bar, patent-pending sling system, serious steel bands, this amazing platform made out of high molecular weight plastic. You can replicate any barbell, dumbbell exercise you can imagine using the Harambe system, loaded up to over 1,000 pounds in resistance. You can do every kind of thing, front squats, back squats, chest presses, rows. It's amazing, only limited by your imagination. It's portable. You can slide it under your bed. You can pack it into a bag, carry it on your back, take it to the park, anything you want. Travel with it, send it on your trips around the world. And remember, when you visit the Harambe System store, use the code TNT to get 10% off any of the swag they have there available. So that's all we have to say for you here today at TNT Strength.
Please enjoy this freewheeling conversation with Logan Herlihy.
That's right. What are we actually talking about today?
Well, we got Logan Emmet Herlihy here in the TNT studio.
Emmet.
So we're having a freewheeling conversation about life, love, weights.
Nice.
Aren't they all the same?
Yeah.
It's all, everything that happens in the weight room applies to life. A lot of crossovers here. But no, for reals, Logan's here from Discover Strength, and he's doing his clinical rotation. And who are you, Logan? I mean, tell it. I know you're famous, but so for the very small amount of people who don't know who you are, want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Logan Emmet Herlihy. I'm a exercise physiologist at Discover Strength in Woodbury, Minnesota. Discover Strength is a high-intensity strength training company. We currently have, I always get the number wrong, because now we have franchises, somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 9 locations. Soon to be opening up in other states. We've got one coming in Arizona, another TBD. So we'll see where those open up, but coming soon to a city near you.
Nice.
I've been involved with exercise my whole life, but I've been a trainer and an exercise physiologist for about the last 6 years.
You're also the host of the Discover Strength podcast.
I guess, yeah.
And he's also the author of a book called
How to Look Good Naked.
How to Look Good Naked, something that all of us aspire to.
Also working on a master's degree, about to complete a master's degree in
Strength and Conditioning from the University of River Falls. Go Falcons.
Basically, just kind of an all-around badass, rising star in the fitness industry, one might say.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll see.
One handsome motherfucker.
And I mean, Discover, it's kind of taking after Luke's model, right? Luke Carlson, the CEO of Discover, travels around the country and trains at all these studios, and he kind of picks, some of the techniques and, practices up from all the little places he visits and incorporates them into, Discover's practices. And now, trainers like yourself are coming out and doing clinical rotations. And is that kind of what Discover's going for with the purposes of this? So
it's a really cool program. After you've been with the company for 3 years, you have the opportunity, and then ongoing every 3 years, if you're so inclined, to travel to our colleagues wherever you feel the need. We've got a list of our favorite places, but if you find a place that's hit influence that you want to go to, I think you can certainly do that as well. And I think the idea is our community is so small anyways. There's a lot of infighting, whether we like it or not, different philosophies, different things like that. I think Luke recognizes, and I certainly recognize, the importance of learning from each other. So I think that's really the main factor here, is not necessarily taking things away or bringing things to, but just how does Jesse coach a rep? How does Liam coach a rep? How does Taylor get that extra little bit out of somebody? Because it's so nuanced, and we always have something to learn in this industry from everybody else. And I think having that approach to exercise in general and realizing that you really don't know it all, except for Liam, who obviously knows it all, is a good a good approach to take. So I'm excited to be here, and it's been fun for me so far. Still got a few days left.
We'll try to make it less fun as we move forward.
Yeah, that's what
I'm sorry that it hasn't been a roll up, but we're working on it.
So we put you through. You've done not exactly a split, but you've done some different workouts in your time here. You did a full body thing day one.
I have worked out
some
more
power
in the
factor.
last 2 days, and we'll work out again today than I have in probably the last 6 years. And though I don't think it's evidence-based to take this approach, I am in a new place and I'm excited to be here. I want to try as much as I can. And
Nice.
I don't think I'm going to get rhabdo from it. So YOLO, as the kids say. Do the kids still say that? I don't know.
YOLO, baby.
But I did my first Tabata in probably a decade the other day with Jesse, and I'm still literally coughing up a lung today from what is that?
Yeah, we had the
160
AED on
seconds of-
standby.
We did some try reps on the leg blaster. That was fun. Left a little lasting impression, as we like to do.
I like the leg blaster a lot. I think it's interesting. I'll speak for myself. I get caught up in machines and different history of stuff. And I've become kind of snobby when I'm talking with colleagues sometimes about what's the best strength curve and what's the best this and that. But the reality is I love all equipment. Well, there's probably certain brands that I wouldn't say that I love, but for the most part, I enjoy trying new things. And I think applying the safe and effective element of high intensity training to the tool, regardless of what the tool is just so important and something that we can all benefit from. Because I think, especially post-COVID, we had this mindset of you have to, again, I'm speaking for myself here, this mindset of you have to use MedX equipment because it's the Rolls Royce of strength training equipment. And then we quickly realized, well, what happens when you're training from home and all you have is a towel or all you have is some milk jugs? Well, you can't use MedX then. So how do we apply these principles?
Kind of painted yourself into a corner a little bit.
Yeah, and it's funny. I use the Rolls Royce analogy all the time, and what I usually say is that most gyms are not going to stock their parking lot with Rolls Royces, right? They're going to fill it with crappy Chevys, and they know that most of the people don't know the difference, right? Because they all have 4 wheels and a steering wheel, right? So they get in there and they go, I don't know, until you actually drive the Rolls, right? And then you get to feel the difference. They get you from point A to point B, essentially, right?
And the funny thing is, I don't think I've ever articulated it this way on our podcast, but to each individual person, their favorite tool feels like the Rolls Royce, right? Maybe they don't know what a strength curve even is, right? Probably most people don't, but they just, for whatever reason, one person loves resistance bands and one person loves MedX and one person loves doing body weight stuff. And that's their favorite thing. And I'll never be convinced otherwise. And I think that's why, being tool agnostic has become a big part of our philosophy because, it really boils down to the individual and how do they get good results and how do they adhere to working out long-term.
Yeah. I also think that certain tools lend themselves to that idea of the mastery of the technique. Like kettlebells are a great example, right? There's a lot of technique involved in manipulating kettlebells effectively, especially if you want to do the traditional stuff, snatches and 2-arm swings, 1-arm swings, and different crazy things, right? So you can get lost in just mastering that technique and not recognizing that it's just a ball of iron, right, with a handle on it. And it's not any different than any other weight, but there are differences in how you manipulate it through space. Yeah. And, like the same thing with the heavy clubs or, the different things that come along and people there was a guy recently on Instagram trying to sell something that basically looks like a tomahawk, like a weighted tomahawk. Yeah. And they're trying to say this is the next greatest, bestest thing, right? And I was just like, what am I going to do? I have to get another bigger set of things and then a bigger set of tomahawks. And then how many do I
Viking or something?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how is it possibly better, right? Than just a set of dumbbells, which is probably the most, it's got so many different applications.
Yeah. But I think, to take that analogy further, thinking of how Arthur Jones would maybe describe the Nautilus machines originally as just like a better dumbbell. Well, it's like people, I think of the pushback that you hear. Obviously, I've never experienced when they introduced motorized carriages, right? Like back in the day. It's like, why would I want this thing if I've got horses that work perfectly fine? And there's always going to be resistance and pushback, especially if it's been effective.
Yeah.
And you look at barbells and it's like, it's hard to argue their effectiveness and their ubiquitousness across the country and across the world of people using these tools that get great results, especially if used in the manner that we might think is effective, right? And used safely. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people using the tools, which again, doesn't matter if it's MedX or if it's Nautilus or Panada or insert brand or barbell or anything. If you're using it ineffectively and unsafely, then there could be consequences from it.
Yeah, I think Arthur Jones's thing was, he used to say it was the thinking man's barbell. Yeah. So it's just, in his mind, it really was just an extension, right, of that. And it's so funny because people often who don't know anything about him always say like, oh, he was only in it for the money and he was just trying to, right, sell this crap, right? And I have no idea that he was just passionate about strength training and just trying to solve some problems for his own reasons. And that all the rest of it came along sort of almost as an accident.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was so into that. It was a big part of his life. Clearly he got into strength training very young. I mean, he was doing, like it's funny when you see people like the West Side guys, they use the chains, right? And they think they're like being innovative. And, he was using chains in like the 30s, I think, actually some of the earliest Nautilus things used chains to vary the resistance. The chain would spool up and spool down to increase and decrease the weight as you move through the range. So, he looked at all those ideas, just, it's not a new thing, right? None of this stuff is new.
So back to the clinical rotation, to me, it seems like a great information gathering kind of mechanism that DS has built into their business now, your business. I'm curious to hear from Taylor Jones, because having Logan here changes the chemistry of our studio a little bit, changes the chemistry of our team. How do you think, do you agree with that? And how do you think it has changed, if you agree?
Absolutely. So I appreciate Logan's perspective, because I know this is somebody that's been in the industry for a while and he's gained a ton of knowledge and he's been under the tutelage of Luke and learning from him as well. And he also has a master's degree. So this is a guy that has a vast amount of information at his disposal, and he's used it in a way that's, not only I've seen it help myself as well, just in the couple of days that he's been here already, but it's something that he's used to help, further his career and where he's trying to pursue. So I definitely could see it from that angle and from my angle as well.
And what do you think, when this week of Logan being in the studio is over, what do you think your big takeaways will be?
Already just some of the cueing and, how I coach clients through sets and whatnot, mannerisms and whatnot, just how I kind of carry myself around the studio, which I'm kind of already starting to do. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
appreciate you.
I think the chemistry element of it is great. There's just so much. It's almost like you're around other people, you share the bacteria, that sort of thing. We share information, we share
licking a lot of the same water.
Yeah, we sneeze on each other, all that good stuff.
No, I think it's as Taylor was mentioning, right? When you get exposed to other people and other ideas, it just broadens your horizon to things. So we're big believers at Discover Strength early on. We like to get our new trainers exposed to as many different veteran trainers as possible. And veteran for us might be somebody who's been there for a year, and somebody like Rick Rignell has been there for 10 plus years. And I think that's just so important, especially when we're isolated in our own little bubbles, to realize there's other ways to do this. That's why I'm so passionate when I travel, as I'm sure you guys are, to want to at least go in and get a training session with someone. My fiance and I are planning a trip to Arizona now, and the first stop that I want to make is to go see Bill Crawford, because I've heard for forever how great Bill Crawford is, and I've met him personally as a wonderful guy, but I'd love to. How does Bill coach a set of chest press different from Luke, different from Jesse, different from Liam, different from Rick? It's amazing the different nuances that you can pick up from someone and go, oh my gosh, I have to incorporate that. Oh my gosh, that's the best way I've ever heard somebody coach, breathing, or it's the best way I've ever heard somebody not say anything. Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all. And it's just about your look and how you can be close to that person and they can feel on your side. And that's, the skills that you can pick up from learning from other people who've been doing this for a long time.
So similar question that I asked Taylor, for you, you're a couple of days into this rotation, still got half a week to go, but what are some of your big takeaways that you're going to go home with?
So I've actually learned nothing from you. No, I think
I got an earlier flight now.
I'm leaving right after this. No, I think it's been really interesting from afar. Like, not, I'm so used to working with our trainers, so it's immediate feedback, and it's like looking for what somebody's maybe, I don't want to say doing wrong, but not doing per se the Discover Strength way. And so to be here and to just observe how things are done, I think is really interesting for me. And it's a challenge too, to not be like, oh, why are you doing it that way when we should do it this way? And realize, like, well, TNT and Discover Strength are not the same thing. And obviously we've got different goals and different things we're trying to accomplish. I think the biggest takeaway for me in the few days I've been here is that you can do this thing so many ways effectively. Like, I'm so ingrained in the Discover Strength philosophy and mindset and, like, systematization of everything. And I like the more, you guys keep calling it freestyle, right? The freestyle nature of things here. It's like you're recording stuff, you're making sure that people are pushing themselves as hard as they can, but it's not the exact, everything's in line every single time the way we have to do it this way. It's like, no, this is how Jesse does it, and then Liam does it a little bit different, and then Taylor does it a little bit different. And obviously your clients love that, and they come back and they are excited to be here, and they're going to get a different experience with every single person they train with. And to me, I think maybe bringing some of that back, just realizing that, like, hey, let's train the person in front of us instead of just trying to train a particular way, which I think I do a pretty good job of, but it's always a good reminder to have, that reinforced of everybody's different and needs to be treated as an individual.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's like built into to all of our stuff, the idea that, the needs, preferences, abilities, goals, right, of this specific person in front of you every time, right? Because you can have the perfect program, right? But if they just hate it, you know what I mean? Doesn't matter how cool you think it is, or, even if it's the best equipment, right? If they just don't want to do it, right? So the ability to branch out and have a more diverse tool, I think, is awesome. People get excited with the changes. Also, with the idea of working with different coaches, we have clients we have a client, for example, who's been working with me for quite some time. She decided to add Taylor into her schedule. Now she's seeing both of us once a week, so she's getting like a different flavor, and loves the, sort of the dynamism of it, right? Of not having that same stuff, right? Because no matter how much you mix it up, you're still yourself, right? And you're not going to be, you're going to still be within your own little track. So now she gets a whole nother perspective, still safe, still efficient, still working hard, right? But another version of that.
On that same note, as coaches, sometimes we can get into like for lack of a better word, like a rut, we just sort of are programming like these same type of workouts for certain clients, like over and over and over. And so to like break out of that and go have a client train with a different coach can be a good reminder for everybody. Like, oh yeah, we can just break this paradigm and just, the fundamentals are still the same, right? We're still moving slowly, using good technique, training intensely, training to failure most of the time, right? But yeah, maybe they go do a circuit with Taylor, or maybe they do something a little more dynamic with Liam, or maybe I have them do a different advanced overload protocol that they've never done before, or something like that. I would agree. I think that we have there are advantages and disadvantages to the freestyle structure that we have here. Like when you are maybe this, and if I'm wrong, then correct me, but I think it sounds like DS, generally speaking, takes more of like a just kind of strict progressive overload, plan where it's like, all right, we did a big 5 last workout and this is the weight we use and these are the reps we got. So now today we're trying to get 1 more rep than last time. And we do train that way, but we don't exclusively train that way, right? And so, like you were mentioning, we just finished J-Rep January. And, so in that protocol, like if I had been, bench pressing 150 pounds, I'm probably going to have to work at 140 pounds if I'm going to J-rep that weight, because it's just a different protocol. It's an advanced overload technique that uses partial repetitions to flatten out a strength curve. And we don't need to get into all of that, but it's more challenging and you need to use lighter weight. So it can seem a little nebulous to both clients and coaches. But if we're focused on just the overall intensity of the workout, then we know that everybody's going to get great results still.
I mean, I think one of the big takeaways for me too is, we talk about this at Discover Strength, is your clients, and I'm sure you've heard Luke say some version of this before, like, don't listen to what your clients think they want because they don't know, right? Like, tell them what they want, and expectations that you set as a trainer, as a business, are extremely important. And it's very obvious here that you guys have not set the expectations the way we've set them at Discover Strength. And just like being more nebulous has trade-offs, so does being completely obsessed with constant, continual double progression. Because we jokingly say that we've created some intensity monsters and people that are just obsessed with, like, oh my God, I didn't get a better rep that time, or I didn't get more weight that time. It's like, well, yeah, who cares? Like, you and I know, who cares? It's one workout over the next 5,000 workouts we're going to do for the rest of your life. As long as we're trending in the right direction, it really doesn't matter. But when you ingrain that in people that I should be improving all the time, well, now you've created a whole different type of monster, right? So
I forget what that book, I don't remember who the author is, but it's called 4,000 Weeks. And it's the idea that the average human being lives for 4,000 weeks. Maybe we should publish a book that's like 8,000 workouts, because if you train twice a week, you get 8,000 workouts in your life. You made me think of that right now, because you're like, next 5,000 workouts, but literally we could count down. If I train twice a week the rest of my life, this is how many workouts I got left.
Yeah. Tom Kelso has that book, one of his many awesome books, and can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head, but I think there's 2,800 workouts in there.
Oh, jeez.
That guy loves to just come up with a million different variations of stuff. Yeah, you can buy this thing and it comes with like a CD-ROM with like 2,800 workouts.
Just do a different one.
Preloaded, of like every kind you can imagine, upper, lower. Yeah. One set, multiple set. Body weights. Every kind of tool, every kind of
Yeah, I think the important thing is just, what do you communicate to your clients, right? And when you set those expectations, whatever they might be, are you living up to them, and are you not just living up to them, but surpassing them, exceeding those expectations? And that, to me, is really where the longevity of a business comes in. Because obviously we've seen other businesses that are extremely successful that we would probably argue are really unsafe, or maybe even stupid would be a stronger word, but they set very clear expectations for their clients when they come in, and people know what they're getting when they come in the door, and there's consistency. And that's all people really want, because they don't really understand exercise and they don't know what's safe and what's not safe. Sure. So it's our job to set those very clear expectations. And obviously we have very different, I wouldn't say very different, but different expectations of this Discover Strength than maybe you do for your average client at TNT. But I would happily send somebody over here if they were visiting the Bay Area and they wanted to get a workout in and they didn't want to do a virtual for whatever reason. I would tell them probably, this is my other thing that I think I've learned so far this week is, I've always thought I was pretty creative with getting off machines, especially since virtuals have come around.
Meaning like using different tools.
Using different tools, exactly. But this week, one of the big things I wanted to accomplish, and that I think we've done a good job so far of exploring, is even more options off machines. What do we do with the equipment that people have? How can I be more creative but safe at the same time? And you guys, I think, do a phenomenal job of incorporating both machine-based training and are you a real version of functional training, if you want to call it that, right? Using other equipment, using other techniques in a very creative, safe, efficacious way that engages your clients.
I think that there are some people doing some different interesting things within the HIIT niche. The Lepowskis being one of them. They almost take like an old school Nautilus, approach where, they're having, first of all, their business has pivoted to being mostly small group training. They don't track results for their clients much, only with the one-on-one clients. And, they're coaching their clients to train 3 times a week, and they're not super concerned. I'm not going to say, that's probably not a good way to phrase it. They're not like obsessively concerned with people progressing every single workout, training to failure every single set. And I think they probably have already gotten and will continue to get some pushback from the rest of the HIIT niche about that. And I think in this, we have kind of a similar approach, whereas, most of the time we're coaching people to train intensely, train to failure. People don't always get there. We don't get hung up on that. We might occasionally have people train more than 2 times per week, especially early on, which DS might also do too, I think you mentioned. But we also, within individual workouts, we might have somebody do an exercise that's not to failure. We know it never was going to be to failure. It wasn't just that we picked a weight that was too light or something like that. And we just use it as a way to either mix it up, create variety, or maybe, we also incorporate some conditioning around the edges, exercises that specifically are not meant to bring people to muscular failure. And we do them just because it's something they enjoy, or something that mixes it up, or something that gets them to breathe hard.
Yeah, a little bit of anaerobic overload without necessarily reaching, pure muscle fatigue localized, right?
Yeah, this is probably beyond the depth and the scope of this conversation, but we've had conversations privately together where we have looked at what is failure, right? Like this very esoteric question in our industry of like, what are we actually trying to accomplish? And I think a lot of people in our industry, I have this picture in my mind of like the hierarchy of needs. That wasn't Pavlov. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We've got food and shelter, and we've got love, and however the pyramid is built, right? And for exercise, I think a lot of times people in the HIIT community put has to be HIIT as the first requirement. And it's like the more I learn about exercise science and literature and everything that's out there and continues to be published, it's probably just exercise, period. Not high intensity training, not, this specific style that we do, that we love.
Doing something consistently.
That's the bottom of the pyramid, right, of that hierarchy. And then I would say that the next step up is probably safe, right? Safety. Now, people ignore that one a lot. But as long as people are doing something, there's a consistent theme in the research that shows that exercise is good for you. And it's going to cultivate a lot of positive benefits in the long term. Now, we can argue all day about what is safe and effective exercise and what's a good form of exercise. But in a world where people are not doing anything, something is certainly better than nothing. It should be our job to educate them on doing the better something, right?
Yeah, it's funny. We have Dan Millman on as a long time ago, one of our episodes. I don't remember which one off the top of my head, but he's an old friend of mine, and that's like one of his mantras is like a little bit of something's better than a lot of nothing, right? Yeah. So it's just like do something, And he does. He's in his 70s now. He's lifting weights, but I mean, he was an elite gymnast. He was a champion on the world champion trampoline guy. He's done all kinds of amazing things. And I was like, now he goes and lifts weights at the YMCA or whatever, right? And that's what he's doing in his 70s to keep himself strong. And, does he do it to failure? I don't know, you know what I mean? But, he's doing it consistently and he eats well and, stays active and all that kind of stuff.
And come to CNC. Do work out with us.
Yeah, Dan.
Well, you need to visit San Francisco anyway. You probably got family here still.
Now everybody's back there. That's what he moved.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the research and stuff, as you guys know too, is even the failure training research is not really to what we would maybe constitute as failure. So if there's this continual, just overwhelming, unequivocal data that's coming forward that says exercise, in air quotes, is good for you, like using bands, doing multiple sets, like it's all good for you, better than doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So let's point people in the right direction. And that's where I think something like the Lepowski approach is a great idea, right? And again, it's about setting expectations, right?
They're also probably doing a good job, I think, of building that community, right?
Yeah.
People are enjoying it.
Which is something I think our industry lacks.
Yeah, people are right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what CrossFit excels at that, right? Yeah. At building that sense of community. They build zealotous fans better than any other system, right? There's just no doubt about it.
Strength, obviously.
And then, the Lepowskis, they've said, people have met and become friends or even whatever, right? Just from being regular participants in that activity, right?
Yeah, they said that some of their clients like vacation together and stuff.
Yeah. And, so that's a great, outcome, I think.
I want to insert this before we move past it, but just to put like a label on what we're talking about. I think what we're describing is optimization versus sufficiency, right? This is what we've talked about outside of, this official podcast recording. But I think one of these things that we're all guilty of with it inside the high intensity training niche is bickering with each other about optimization, right? It's like, how do you get the most out of that last 1% of training, whereas I completely agree with what you're saying. We're not going to convince everyone in the world that strength training is, to do strength training twice a week for the rest of their life, right? Just people don't like it, and we know the stats, only like on a good day, 20% of Americans have a gym membership, so
really good day.
yeah. So I think it behooves all of us as fitness professionals to think of ourselves in a broader sense as more like just health coaches, right? And be just like a positive force in people's lives. We have a bias because we work in a strength training business. Our bias is to bring people into that business, but we're not going to bring everybody in. And if it's like, well, oh, you don't want to train with that, you don't want to train with DS, or you don't want to train with TNT, well, screw you then. Well, we're going to create a lot of enemies. And we're really like, I mean, this is, my personal goal is to try to get people to fall in love with exercise, strength training if possible. But if you're going from sitting on the couch to taking short hikes, then that is
for me, I still totally disagree with that in the sense that I don't believe that going for a walk is exercise. That's just me.
Yeah.
To me, it has to be like a meaningful thing.
I'm a big believer in the Ken Hutchins definition of exercise.
But I do think that an active lifestyle is a thing that should be achieved, and strived for. But I don't think, like I said, just because you went and played Frisbee in the park, to me, that isn't exercise.
Yeah, I'm not saying that playing Frisbee in the park is going to give you an overload stimulus to hold on to muscle as you age. But I am saying that if a person decides to just walk the dog or whatever it is, that's way better than doing nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And to even add on to that, when I say exercise in this context, I was referring to strength training. Yeah. I just don't care. I care how people do it. But I don't think it's as important as we sometimes believe how they do it versus the fact that they do it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right? And the more people we can get to insert resistance training of any variety, the better off we're going to be as a population as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like we want them to do it, whether they do it. Like I tell people, even when they come in here, like I don't care if you do it with us, but you should be doing it. Yeah. You need to be doing some kind of strength training, hopefully for the rest of your life. Just find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And there are many ways that work, right? There isn't just one best way necessarily, but we, like Jesse has often said, which I think is awesome, is, like, it doesn't really, we don't care how many sets you do, but one of those sets should be as hard as possible, right? Like, like don't just, do the classic, like I did 3 sets of 10 and,
and I mean, I think our bread and butter, the people we're looking for, are people who don't know anything. So they're willing to listen to us as professionals, maybe who've had past injuries or made some of the stupid mistakes that Jesse and I, and probably not Liam, have made in the past, as far as like,
Now, Liam's got funny stories about training mistakes in the past.
He's got good ones. But, ego lifting or whatever it might be, like getting those people that just go, hey, I want a better, healthier life, and you're the professional, so I'll do what you say. Like, awesome. Let's get in here and do something safe. I'm probably not going to reach the 25-year-old who's powerlifting and getting great results doing it, but maybe I'll get him when he's 50 and his joints don't feel as good and he knows that he still needs to lift, but he would never have listened to me in his 20s because I probably wouldn't have listened to me in my 20s, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah, I think people in their 20s have sawdust in their ears or something.
When I started my career, my very first job was in an Nautilus gym, and I was being indoctrinated into those methods immediately, and I was not listening to them. I did that because that's what they told me to do, and that's what I instructed. But I was reading the muscle magazines and, like looking at these guys like you were looking at the wall, and going, well, that's not what he said, right? Yeah. Gary Stridham didn't say I should do 1 set to 50.
Yeah.
But the funny thing that took me a while to recognize when I was in that gym is invariably the guys that looked the best, that were in the best shape and everything, were actually doing it.
Yeah.
And I would look at them and I'd be like in awe of their physique, and the guy would be like, oh, I only train, like 4 times a month, or you know what I mean? And I'd be just like, what? How could that be possible? Like I'm training, I'm doing, 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. And, I'm just like, what's not happening? What am I not getting? Right. You get those epiphanies, hopefully.
I mean, I think we get caught up on the oh my gosh, you're overtraining to the people that we're exposed to, right? But the reality, I mean, I don't think we can drive this point home enough, is that 5 to 15% is sort of the number that I've seen thrown around from URSA and other organizations, that's the activity rate. That's the participation rate in health clubs and studios, is somewhere in that 5 to 15% of the American population, and that's what we're all fighting over, right? Because it hasn't really changed that much since like the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of potential people that impact out there, right? And for every single person that's training 6 days a week for 3 hours, like we did when we were young and dumb, there's another 4 people that aren't doing anything at all, and those people have so much to gain from, again, air quotes, exercise, resistance training, hopefully training at TNT twice a week. But
this is a little bit of a segue, but with you guys over there at Discover Strength, do you have a, because we talked a little bit offline about sort of the progression and the planned out stuff that, over a certain period of weeks and so forth. Do you guys have sort of a base cadence that you try to instruct? Are you like doing the classic like 2-4 thing?
No, 2-4 is sort of the generalized protocol that we use. Mm-hmm. So that's the classic Nautilus protocol, and that's if we say regular reps, that's typically what we're talking about.
Yeah. And then do you experiment with when you're playing and stuff? Because I know you guys do a lot of sort of intensity techniques. Mm-hmm. Do you do cadence variations as part of that for a lot of time?
Yep. So we have super slow. There's a variety of techniques that are built around the 2-4 cadence that have different isometrics or eccentric emphases. We label some stuff differently than like some of the readings that you might be familiar with, like Arthur Jones. Jesse and I were talking about this the other day. Our negative emphasis is what Arthur Jones would call negative accentuated, and then our negative accentuated is something else entirely. Mm. It's just 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? It's all, that's the nuance, that's the art of it. Partially getting variety to a client, so they're not just doing regular reps all day, regular 2-4 cadence reps, but also I think one of the important things about messing around with different protocols, whether they're J reps or something else, is sometimes that's the best way to get a little more out of someone, and you don't know what that particular protocol is until you try it with them. Personally, with my clients, I find that extended holds built into the set are a great way to get somebody to push themselves a little further. If you have to do an isometric at the top of the movement, it just sort of builds in a level of intensity that maybe they wouldn't do on their own if they're just doing standard cadence repetitions. So
I think isometrics make a lot of sense as a set ending sort of technique from an energy usage standpoint, right? Because between concept, the lifting, the lowering, or the holding of a weight, the holding actually costs less ATP, right? And so I just find, I've worked with many people at this point who they have, it's just really hard. Training to failure is really hard. Yeah. And a lot of people want to quit before they truly get there. And then there's always the question in the back of your mind, even as an experienced person, did I actually get there? Yeah. Right. But if we tack on a static hold with the muscle contracted at the end of the set, and now we've worked to, or as close as possible to, isometric failure, then we've definitely stimulated positive failure, which is all we know from research we need to get stronger.
I think a lot of the mistakes that a lot of people make when applying these different methods is letting the sets get too long, right? Like, a lot of those things, people used to call them set extenders, right? Yeah. But as we know, like the sweet spot for most people is going to be under 90 seconds, right? So since we're tracking time under tension, I think a lot of mistakes that happen is they don't recognize, like for me, for example, if I'm doing like a pre-exhaust set, like, if they're doing an isolated movement, let's say they're doing a pec deck immediately into a chest press, I still want that combined 2 sets to take less than 90 seconds. So a lot of the times the mistake is they'll get them to 90 seconds on the first set, and then they'll get them another 90 seconds on the second set, right? They're like missing the point, really. So for me, like people don't recognize that once you hit fatigue on that first set, it should happen hopefully somewhere in that 45 to 60 second range. And you should only get like maybe 30 seconds more on the second movement, right? So you're just trying to crush it in that short amount of time, but keep it in that sweet spot. Sometimes the combination when they're starting to get carried away with these overload principles is, sets end up taking 2 or 3 minutes, and it's, not really an understanding of, what the end result is hopefully going to be, I think.
Yeah. And we've had some conversations about this off air too. Like I do not personally want a set that goes over 3 minutes. But since we're not really concerned with time under tension per se at Discover Strength, it's not something we really track on a regular basis. I would say the biggest thing is just continuing to find that sweet spot in whatever the rep range is. So if somebody were to do a pre-exhaust pec fly into a chest press for the first time, and they end up getting, let's just say, 10 reps on the first exercise and 15 on the next exercise, but they get to true failure, or at least it seems like they're getting to failure, I'm fine with that. And let's just increase that chest press weight the next time.
Yeah.
Again, just 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. And, we could get into the semantics of all the different strategies. To me, it's interesting. The most interesting thing about training and about working with colleagues like you guys and seeing other really experienced professionals is how they get that last little bit out of someone. And then just on the topic of failure in general, I think the research is so bad on what that actually is, because Jesse and I were talking about this. I've been doing this for a long time. I think I could argue that I've not reached failure on most sets I've ever done. And I'm pretty good at working hard compared to the average person. So, yeah, that's a whole separate rabbit hole. But I think just, can you get that person to work harder than they would on their own?
Yeah,
Mission accomplished.
Right. It's not measurable, right? Still.
Yeah.
Whether it was 87.5% of their best effort or whatever. Yeah. We don't know.
We'd have to do a in the moment, in second to second biopsy, microscopic visual of that.
We have some static tools here we should play with while you're here. So and I've got a million things running through my brain. So you'll probably do 100 workouts before you go back.
Perfect.
Hey, what are those guys doing here? Whenever I feel like I'm stalling out on my bench press, I know I need a new strength curve.
Whether you're stalling out on the road or stalling out in the gym, you need something with great engineering.
That's right. And
So look for the pendulum. Pendulum.
Not just your average strength machines.
No, they have smooth strength curves.
Amazing rigidity.
And did we mention the engineering's fantastic?
That's right. Not to mention, they come in cool colors.
Like red.
And silver. Well, that was kind of weird. What was that all about? Back to the interview.
I think that each of us has a unique perspective because we host our own podcasts, right? You, Logan, get to talk with, amazing people like Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. We've each interviewed Dr. James Fisher. We're talking with very knowledgeable, on the cutting edge of the fitness industry people. And so I'm curious to hear from you. You're doing a clinical rotation. You just get exposed to some of the best, newest ideas, research that's been substantiated over decades. And I'm curious about how do you think the high intensity training niche should be moving forward based on the people you've met, based on the new things that you get to learn because of the people you get to talk to on a regular basis?
Yeah, I personally think what we're doing at Discover Strength is great to just broaden the visibility of high intensity training to the masses. We've got a very ambitious goal at the company to have 100 locations by the end of 2025, so whatever that is, 3 years, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
So I think with that will come a lot of exposure in ways that the industry probably hasn't had since the Nautilus days, where there used to be the Nautilus facilities everywhere. I don't think there's a right way per se to do this. I really enjoy the way we do it at Discover Strength. I've talked with colleagues who have mentioned to me wanting to figure out ways where it's more affordable, right? Where how can you build something that's available to the masses, which, I think Discover Strength is priced appropriately for our value and what we offer to the community, but we're certainly not giving away free workouts besides the, introductory session, right? Like it's viewing our exercise physiologists as professionals and leaders in the health and wellness space, and they should be paid appropriately. And I completely agree with that. But I think if somebody were to come up with a more, I hesitate to say affordable model, but something that's more available to the masses, I think that would be a phenomenal thing to happen. I would love to see.
Could be the Lebowski's in pure physique. That's small group training.
That might be the approach. It might have to be spreading out the costs with multiple people, but finding that ideal ratio between trainer to trainee.
Even the old school models, the old school Nautilus models, used to be taught all the YMCAs and all that kind of stuff, right, for decades. It's going under the radar. But just the classic, it's basically circuit style training, right? it works. And even someplace like Planet Fitness really could be a perfect place if they implemented it on purpose, where they set up these things and taught people when they came in as members, this is what you're going to do, and you're just going to go down this line from 1 to 12 or A through Z or whatever it is. Set up a circuit. The YMCA where I used to work, that the machines were numbered or lettered, right? And you would create a circuit, and you on Monday you would do these numbers, and then you do another one, right? You could just see that big numbers on them.
Spell a word. You just do a taku.
Yeah, and you would know what your circuit was, right? And you'd hit those circuits and go through, and there's ways they could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, Nautilus One created machines that actually light up, so like you go from this one to the next one to the next one as the sequence lights up, right? They had ways to track the rep cadences. It's all built in live circuit. You probably never even saw that back in the late 80s, early 90s. Probably, to me, one of the best systems ever created. Kind of came and went. Just there's ways that it could be done.
Yeah, I think that circuit training is certainly the way that you could get it to the masses. And again, it's taking the complexity out of what we do, which is so hard because we're so interested in the minutia of everything. But the reality is, if you could get somebody to do an A and B routine that was 6 to 12 exercises and get them to do that consistently twice a week for the rest of their life without ever changing it, their life would be infinitely better.
Universal, Universal, which is another strength training company, they're the ones that used to have the multi-station pieces that were ubiquitous. They're in every high school gym and every college. They created, again, 50 years ago, something they called the super circuit, which was literally just, strength machine, cardio machine, strength machine, cardio machine, strength machine. My dad used to go in every day, do the super circuit before work, just like ride the bike, then do push pull, whatever, ride the bike, run in place, ride, and just do that thing. 24-hour fitness did the same thing, creating these little circuits thing. That kind of thing, like you said, if you could get more people to do it, it doesn't matter if they're progressing a little bit, they're doing it several times a week, it's going to be gigantic.
That would be like a non, supervised version of that. I mean, I think there also could be like a mass, like a successful like mass model. How it was when you were first starting out as a strength coach, and it wasn't like one person training one client. It was more like there's a floating strength coach, walking around, from gym open to gym close. There's always somebody available, and maybe the person who's in there training, but it's more like a passive gym membership, right? Where you can come in at any time and there are coaches floating, and maybe you have more coaches floating during rush hour times. But Kaiser doesn't do that, do they? I mean,
they basically do, like you get introduced, they teach you how to do everything, but then you're on your own. And then you check in. I think it's like every 20 workouts or something like that. And then they can help you, like maybe create a new circuit or make some changes. Check in how your progress is and so forth.
The Fit 20 model to me is something that could be, if scaled appropriately.
Which is what is their system?
So it's basically a big 5 that they do.
So horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull, leg press.
Pull, leg press. And then I think every other week or something, they switch in and do some other isolated leg movement. So they do an abduction as opposed to a leg press, or they might do like a leg extension, leg curl. But I think the business model is built differently, where there's options to, or maybe you just would have just the big multi-joint movements as well. But that study they published not too long ago with the gentleman at Solent University, so Dr. James Fisher, Dr. James Steele, I think maybe Schoenfeld may have been involved with that paper. It's got a really long name. It's like a longitudinal review of minimum dose approach strength training or something like that. But essentially they took, so Fit 20 is cool because they have, for a long time, they had their own proprietary, and they still do, tech that was built into the machines. So they're time in, time under load. They're doing all super slow, so 10-10 pacing. But you go on the chest press, they have your profile pulled up, and they're recording your weights and your time, and it's going up to the cloud. Well, Dr. Steele got access to 15,000 plus users and was able to, look at that data over the course of 6 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And see how strength changed, when people basically peaked out on their strength. And super interesting. But they're training once a week for 20 minutes, right? So Is it 3 hours 6 times a week, or is it 20 minutes once a week? Well, the sweet spot's probably somewhere in between there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's, I'm torn sometimes because, like, the DS models, right, get people in twice a week. The TNT models get people in twice a week. That can be too much for some people, especially, people who train hard. And what, a point of conflict sometimes is like, we'll have somebody who, right, people trust us, right? They take us at our word when we say, yeah, 2 times a week is optimal for most people. And they're doing it and doing it and doing it. And then they start to feel like maybe they're overtraining, right? Because sometimes people, like, 2 full days of rest might not be enough for some people sometimes, right? So they feel rested when they have the 3 days of rest between Thursday and their next Monday workout. But then between Monday and Thursday, they feel like that's not quite enough.
Yeah.
So what happens sometimes is that people, those twice a week people, they might just stop training because they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing it too much. And it just totally like slips their mind that either they don't understand that they still will get great results training once per week, or doing some sort of irregular, type of like scheduling. Yeah. So the Fit 20 approach of like, everybody's just going to go once a week. I could see that working very well, because you basically, I would think that almost no one ever overtrains, only training once per week.
Yeah, and I can't speak to what they do as a company, but for sure, I would assume. But again, it comes back to setting expectations. Maybe you have somebody who's like, "Hey, I like doing this. Can I train another time?" I can't imagine from a business owner perspective that they'd be like, "Nope, once is all you get." So
yeah.
Maybe they've got it figured out in the sense of wait until somebody asks for more instead of waiting until they're asking.
There's been a ton of research. I mean, even with Body by Science, but before that, like John Little did research way back, his own thing, called the Nautilus North Study, where basically when the dust settled, it was looking like almost everybody once every 7 to 10 days was like enough, right? So again, that comes back to that minimal dose, right? Like,
but big caveat here. How hard were they training?
Yeah,
because John Little's probably supervising their workings and making sure that they're working really hard. So if you're not training that hard, is once every 10 days optimal? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, I think from a business owner perspective, you have a twofold thing to look at, which I think we've talked about this as well, is like, why is Discover Strength twice a week? Well, I would argue we have clients who could easily train once a week and get great results. But consistency over the long term, lifespan, is so important for retention and so important for actually like keeping a habit. So
and also you look at, right, like if somebody is committed to training once per week, and now, right, we're not just looking at like the training program in a vacuum, we're looking at like a person's life, like holistically. You don't make every single workout, right? No one can. Okay. Even with, we say there are 168 hours a week and all it takes is one to get great results.
Yeah.
No one is making, 52 workouts a year if they're training once a week, or 104 if they're training twice a week, right? If you get 7 out of 8 every month, you're doing fantastic, And when you are on that once a week program, and now you miss a workout, now you're going 14 days in between workouts, right? Whereas if you're on the twice a week schedule, right, you miss it. Right now, you've had a week of rest, where as opposed to 2 weeks. So
I mean,
there's always give and take to any of these scenarios.
And again, because of the expression of the human condition, right? There are people that could benefit from training once a month, probably, and people that can train much more frequently. I think that almost everyone, though, over time can get away with less. Yeah. Assuming it's quality, right? For sure. Jim Flanagan says he trains like once every 2 weeks now, I think.
Might even be more than that.
Yeah, Clarence
longer.
Clarence Bass has gone down to one total body workout a week. Says he wished he started doing it 30 years ago. He does one super hard conditioning session and one hard strength training session a week. Yeah, and that's it.
But again, it's intensity then becomes the most important variable, as it is arguably anyways, right? Sure. And is the average person who's never worked out before able to challenge themselves enough in one workout every 10 days to actually make it beneficial? Well, again, I'd say it's probably better than nothing, but maybe, we talked about this. Occasionally we'll have somebody that comes in to Discover Strength who's training 7 days a week, twice a day, who's like twice a week will literally kill me from not doing enough. Right? Yeah. They're convinced of that. So let them train 3 times a week and let's try to just destroy their soul. Very rarely does somebody continue with 3 times a week for long? There are exceptions to the rule. We train a guy in Georgia who freaking loves it. And even if he can't give 100% that day, it's so important for his mental health to be there 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That I totally understand that.
Yeah, well, we had a distance client who came to us during the pandemic who was like, you know, training basically 7 days a week, but he knew about it. He was very familiar with it. He understood it, right? And, you know, it's kind of funny. By his own admission, he said he was listening to our podcast all the time, and he said he was in the kitchen and his wife just looked at him and said, "I think you need these guys." Right? and so when he came to me, he just going down to 3 days a week was a big drop, right?
Yeah.
Because he was literally there every day. And so what I had him do was go ahead and train 3 days a week, but I had him take a week off every month. So he'd train as hard as he could for 3 weeks, take a week off, as hard as he could for 3 weeks. That's just another way that I found that works really well for someone to be able to keep it up. This is something that Dan Duchesne used to mention with the body contract stuff, you know, just take 1 week off out of every month, you know, but crush it in those other 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's what I had him doing that. So that worked for a while. You know, he stayed with us for a long time. And this was, you know, he was based in Hawaii actually at the time. I don't know what he's doing now. I don't know if he slowly went back to the 7 days a week because I haven't talked to him in a while. But you know, hopefully he stuck with the 3. But it was, you know, working effectively, and you know, that was a way for me to let him do what he wanted.
Yeah.
But try to still hone down some of that frequency with more quality. I've used that model myself to take a week off every 3 weeks, and it's the only way that I personally can keep up the 3 times a week workout. Like I
shout out to Dr. Pack, who's working on a deload study right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, as we're talking about this, I'm looking at my InBody results right in front of me, and I've gained 3.7 pounds of muscle since my last InBody, and I realized that today I just did my first strength training workout in the last. It's been basically 10 days since I did my last strength training workout. So I'm like, should I be taking more time in between?
Honestly, for a lot of people who do know how to work hard, I think they can get away with much less. Like I mentioned to you, you know, our guy who's basically trains 1/3 of his body a week, right?
Yeah.
So it takes 3 weeks to train his, you know, a month basically to train his whole body once.
And we're the exceptions to the rule, right? Because Jesse and I have talked about this, and I know going into this week that I'm going to be overtrained, and I'm probably not going to impress you guys as much as I would have if I just didn't train at all and did one really hard all-out session. My fitness evolution has been sort of this big circle where I've kind of come back to this point in the beginning where, why did I get into exercise in the first place? Freaking love the gym. Like, I love going to the gym. I love the culture there. I love watching weights move up and down. I love feeling a pump. But now I have so much information in my brain about I can't train for 2 hours a day, but am I willing to sacrifice maybe some of the not long term, but some of the shorter term 3 pounds of muscle increase, if that means mentally I can work out a little more frequently? I'm not talking crazy volume here, except for this week again, but going and spending 45 minutes in the gym 2 or 3 times a week because I want to have a little more rest time in between exercises. And maybe I'm doing some sort of split routine just so I can work out more, because I've done the once every 10 days thing. It's really effective, and you can gain a shitload of strength doing it. That's what I did at my first job at the super slow place, and my strength increases were off the freaking charts week after week. But I want to work out every 10 days. I like going to the gym. I want to do cool stuff with Liam. Maybe just not do 12 exercises every time I come in, and I'll be okay. You know, just do one set of power factor.
That's right. Yeah. We have a fun time with the split routines sometimes. It's just, I mean, right, going back to like optimization, you know, most of the time all of us are doing a single set to muscular failure per exercise, but and you know, we might do like 1 or 2 pushes and 1 or 2 pulls in each workout, but it is fun to sometimes do 10 pushes in a workout and split your week into a push pull legs or something like that. And we know that research supports this, that it's maybe sometimes a good idea to do that. Get a little more volume.
Ryan Johnson used to call it blitzkrieg, right? Like, you know, you blast up the volume and frequency and everything's, you know, just briefly, you know, every 8 to 12 weeks or something, right? You're kind of doing more of the standard. And then you really stack everything up a little bit to give you that extra push to get to that overreaching, but just stop just shy of, you know, going off the cliff. Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to apply it. That makes me think about so many different things we got to do still this week.
Yeah.
Maybe today we'll do the 3D dumbbell matrix or some of the metabolics.
We already put the fear of God into him about the dumbbell matrix.
The fear of Liam.
Yeah, that's right.
We can do some leg cranks and metabolic circuits.
Yeah. So going back, we went down like a million different rabbit holes there, but going back to your response about, moving the hit niche forward, I know that DS is like very, and Luke are very determined to be an authority in the fitness industry. I think that's like the slogan for like the resistance exercise conference, right? It's like be an authority, in fitness, which is great because like in a lot of ways, the fitness industry, I think, is perceived by people in other industries as being kind of this like hot airhead industry, and so to be like focused on research and safety and longevity and all these different things is really a shift for like the mainstream to be exposed to that. But I just want to say that I have a lot of appreciation for DS and Luke and you and the whole team over there, because this is kind of the way I see it, like knowing some of the history of the fitness industry is like, Arthur Jones and Nautilus came on the scene for most people in the 60s, and the Nautilus technology was revolutionary. It changed the world of strength training forever. And it was the ideas were so forward thinking with, better strength curves and all this stuff that people didn't even realize it. And I wish that, and Liam will probably chime in about this, I wish that Arthur Jones had been more focused on building a great company with Nautilus. I think he understood, and he had a real chip on his shoulder, rightly so, about having invented this revolutionary new technology. And I could never understand what that man had to deal with in terms of convincing people that like Nautilus was great, which all of us know that it was and still is. And all of the ideas, many of the ideas that he wrote about in the Nautilus bulletins still hold up. And he's one of the most important people in the history of the fitness industry. And I think that DS especially is really taking over where Arthur Jones left off. And I think that, you're inside the organization. For me on the outside, it really seems like just DS as an organization is trying to move things forward and trying to create a great company. And I completely agree with your take that becoming an authority, like becoming more well-known to the mainstream is probably, like as an organization, is probably the best way to move the entire niche or industry forward. So just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, first off, obligatory plug for the Resistance Exercise Conference. If you haven't signed up already, you certainly should. I think there's still a couple days left as of this recording, which is February 1st.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if this episode gets released before rec happens.
Yeah, this one's probably a few months off.
Okay, well then rec 2024.
I hope you had a great time. 2023.
Great time in rec 2023. We're looking forward to rec 2024. But no, I think it's a great conference, and as Luke always talks about, it's like nobody else is going to do it, and it has to be done. So we need to do it.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Well, maybe he just said that to us.
Yeah.
It's this is something that needs to be done, and if nobody else is going to do it, then it's our job. As one of our core values one of our focuses and our vision is leading the movement in evidence-based exercise. This is part of that, right? Yeah. It's the same reason we have a podcast. It's kind of obligatory if you want to lead the movement.
And right there, right, having that intention of being a leader, right, like having that messaging consistent in your organization means that everyone from top to bottom thinks of themselves as a leader. And that's super important.
Yeah. And it goes into another thing we talk about internally, which is, and I don't think Luke would be upset about me sharing this, is, we want to be viewed as the Mayo Clinic of exercise, right? So with that comes a level of professionalism and goes into our thoughts and our belief in wanting to professionalize the personal trainer in a way that they're viewed as an actual health alliance professional, which they are and we are not currently, right? So we would love to see at some point in the future some sort of state or national accreditation for people where the lay person can go, Jesse has this American exercise institution, whatever certificate that says like he actually knows what the heck he's talking about. and your average person would know, the same way they would go see a dentist or a doctor or a physical therapist, that there is a minimum accreditation to be somebody involved in this industry. And TBD on when that happens and what that's going to look like, because this industry is so all over the place and there's so many different certifying
It has
boards.
to be a union or
We
something.
want to be the In-N-Out burger.
You guys,
Yeah.
I do love
Hamburger,
In-N-Out.
cheeseburger, that's his secret menu.
Well, I don't know that Discover Strength.
We do a couple things and we do them awesome.
Yeah. I don't know that we will personally be the company that, but I wouldn't put it past Luke to actually drive that through Congress and make it some sort of, official litigating body. But I think it's important to streamline the way that people are viewed. So in the meantime, what we're trying to do is create a minimum requirement for our trainers. In the meantime, what we're trying to do is spread this idea that, you have an exercise professional, not just a bro in a tank top who's, taking you through a workout. And then that goes into, well, why, when you walk into a Discover Strength, does it not look like a normal gym? Well, because we don't want it to look like a normal gym. We want it to look like a professional building. We want our trainers to be wearing a shirt and tie, because you don't see that at the gym. So it's something worth talking about. It's a talk trigger that's going to let you know, hey, I'm somewhere different. This is not, I don't want to call out any specific gyms, but this is not that place that I was before. This is
It's not a gym dungeon.
Yeah.
It's clean. It's professional. There's a higher bar.
Yeah.
In terms of professionalism.
Yeah. And whether or not that makes us better than other places, I don't think that's the case. But I think putting that image into the mind of somebody who walks in the door for the first time, that goes, oh, this is different. This is something I'm not used to. And then we can use that as an opportunity to educate them on what the actual research says. And we can do it from a place where, hey, we look like a professional. Maybe that's cheating a little bit, because you could do that at a CrossFit gym, right? And have people in shirts and ties and full suits if you wanted to, telling you that you need a dead clean or, do barbell hang cleans or whatever it is.
Right.
And people will probably respect you more. But I think it works to our advantage.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor? 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 Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, I think so. I think we're freewheeling out here. Yeah.
Just a dude disguised as an exercise dude playing another exercise.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff there.
Yeah, I'm just, thinking about all the things I'm going to do to you this week.
I love it. It sounds
Sounds a
great.
little strange.
Yeah,
Let's do
but-
that.
I don't know. I think the other thing that I'd be remiss not to mention is whether it's looking at Discover Strength franchising, when TNT maybe makes that jump at some point, looking at TNT franchising, looking at Lipowski and Pure Physique franchising, finding if you're passionate about exercise and maybe you feel like you can't do this on your own, go to discoverstrengthfranchising.com and learn more about that process. Or if you love group training and you've never trained in high intensity and you live in the upper Northeast, go to Pure Physique. Let Mike and Corey Beth put you through a workout and show you what it's like to do group training in a high intensity fashion in a way that you probably never experienced before. All these companies, I think, what's the expression?
Rising tide lifts all ships.
All boats. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of competition in the industry that I personally don't look at as competition, because I think what Discover Strength does is so unique, and we're so laser focused on what our goal is and who our target market is and the people we're trying to reach, that if the perfect workout succeeds, that's great, because you know what it's going to do? It's going to get more exposure. If you guys become the biggest gym in all of Oakland, I think that's great, because it's going to expose people on the West Coast to this style of training. If Pure Physique opens 1,000 franchises all over the world, I think that's freaking awesome, because again, we're getting that exposure.
Yeah, that for me, that point is why I think working on our digital presence is important.
Yeah.
Because it speaks to the greater goal of being evangelists for not just high intensity training, but just more generally speaking, safe, effective training, right? I don't care how many sets you're doing, just work as hard as you can. And one of them, just make sure it's safe, don't hurt yourself. And like Liam's saying, just make strength training be a consistent part of your life, moving forward. And the fitness industry, like if you take a platform like Instagram, for example, like the fitness industry as a whole does great on Instagram.
Yeah.
There's all these booty blasting 25-year-olds out there, and they are great marketers. And I've said it, many times on this podcast. I think we all have to get better at marketing. The returns might not be immediate, and when you listen to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, you realize that like it takes a long time to get results from this stuff. And I mean, putting out consistent content for years to maybe see any return. People get frustrated when they post a couple reels and they don't get eyeballs on it, but it takes consistency, volume, and strategy. You can't just do the same thing over and over and hope for better results. We have to be innovating with this stuff. If we do that collectively, think about the shift that could happen. We were talking about this before, right? What if people started to come into high intensity training studios and they already know what we do, because we have hundreds of thousands of followers across all of our collective platforms. And when we say, oh yeah, we do high intensity training, they know we're not talking about high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
They're talking about one set to failure, moving slow. And they know there's a recognition because we are an authority. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that is the rising tide lifting all ships. Outside of more locations, the internet is the most powerful tool we've ever known, and we all could be using it better.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, that saying has been around for a very long time, that it takes, 15 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
So, that's one of those things, and you can't like, honestly, I don't believe plan it out directly from, point A to point B. There's, just sort of like the idea that nobody can absolutely guarantee that something's going to go viral, right?
Yeah.
And then things can just happen.
I mean, nothing would make me happier than 10 years from now, having been with the company at that point 15 plus years, to run into somebody who's never been to a Discover Strength before, and they come in for the first time and go, God, you guys are everywhere. How old is this?
Right, yeah, they're like sick of you.
And
marketing's everywhere.
They think it's a year old, and then we got some VC firm to come in and just give us a bunch of money because this is so popular and the thing to do at the time, and then to tell them, actually, this company's been around for 25 years, again, 10 years in the future, right? 25 plus years going on, 28 years.
Yeah.
And it's not an overnight success. And we built this up, and Luke put his blood, sweat, and tears, as the rest of us did, to make this that overnight success.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear the same with Pure Physique. And I'd love to hear the same thing with TMT. And I'd love to hear the same thing with all these other companies that this new niche hit thing that's out there, not knowing that, Arthur Jones was beating his head against the table in the 1960s trying to get bodybuilders to not do 20 cents of everything. Yeah. So
it's so funny having that conversation with like new clients, for example. Like we're still, in April 2023, it'll be our 2-year anniversary, in our brick and mortar spot. And people sometimes ask you like, oh, how long have you been open? We go like, well, the brick and mortar's been open for almost 2 years, but like, if you mean like, when did our business start? Then it was a couple years before that. And like, if you mean like, when did we start planning our business? Well, it was a couple years before that. And, so it's like, yeah, going back to that idea of, whatever quote unquote overnight success. These things take a long time. All of us, I think a common denominator, people who train clients at TNT, is that we love what we do. And I think there's not too many people I've come across in the fitness industry who don't like helping people or don't like training people. Their motives might be slightly different. Like sometimes you hear trainers say, oh, I like to train clients because it keeps me motivated to, to stay in shape or something like that. Whereas, other people like to help people, and it's intrinsically rewarding.
Yeah, that's another, classic saying is, the idea that when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So, that's always a good thing.
I haven't done any work here, so I really love this place.
There you go.
Boom, baby! What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Truth Not Trends.
That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio
510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly bosu.
I'm working on my new joke about, what do you call a fish with no eye?
Walleye.
No.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
Doctor? Doctor. Doctor? Doctor. 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 Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor. Doctor. Doctor. Doctor. And doctor. Well, we miss anyone?